Hello, everyone. This is episode number 6 of our Findhorn Barrow. Today, we're joined with Carolin Waldmann, who is a musician, a multi-instrumentalist musician, and also Global Ecovillage Network Europe's new membership manager. I managed to get that all in one mouthful there. And we've also got Alex Wright with us, my co-host for our Findhorn Barrow, and Kira and Shona, Alex's two black cats. Carolyn, can you tell us how you became involved in Ecovillages and how you found yourself in Findhorn?
Sure, yeah. So I think actually the first time I heard about the Ecovillage movement was through a flyer that I came across when I was, I think, 15 or something like that. And that connected me to quite a well-established eco-village in Germany called Siebenlinden. And through that, I then, did lots of research because already in school, I was just not, in a way, satisfied, with the, models and, let's say the conventional ways of living and working. So I've always already been looking for alternatives. And that then really spoke to me. And through that, I've done a lot of internet research that in my teenage years in a way. And so I came across the Global Ecovillage Network. And through that, of course, then also, Findhorn, which is the oldest eco-village in Europe and very well established with us also, just having celebrated 60 years. And then it's actually a sweet story. Just after I've graduated from high school, I've, been looking at my life and was thinking, okay, what do I want to do? And I created a vision board. And there was actually a picture of the community center and the nature sanctuary of Findhorn. So already back then, there was something in me really intrigued by that. I think the principle of inner listening in particular, just really longing for being guided in the way, but through an inner navigation system instead. Just through an outer ways of doing things. So, somehow it appeared very early on in my life. Yeah.
And what kind of background did you come to that from? Was your life before very different? Where was it that you grew up?
Yeah, I grew up in the south of Germany, in Bavaria, and in a very rural area and, in a house and a big garden, and I had lots of pets. So, definitely in a kind of, nature-based way, but my family was not very alternative or hippie, I would say. They were just quite normal in a way, very open, to spirituality and these sorts of things and ecology or an ecological life, but not very much focused on that. But I went to a conventional school and my education was quite straightforward in the conventional ways. It was more me, always craving for, probably what you can call it now, informal education, and just kind of a holistic way of learning and discovering the world and just being quite frustrated with the system in a way. Yeah.
And since you have moved to Findhorn and since you have been following the eco-village life, what kind of roles have you found yourself playing?
Yeah. I think I'm really grateful for actually immersing myself in that world straight after I left school. I didn't go to university or, did any formal apprenticeship or so, which is, the usual way often of doing things in Germany. I directly actually went into either, project where I contributed through volunteering or, actually volunteering was my way into the whole eco-village world and then eventually also into my work life. When I left school, I first got involved in a year-long program for youth called Project Peace, which was based in the south of Germany in an eco-village there. And basically part of that for 6 months, I've been living with young people in a set eco-villages, and we had different programs and courses. And for the other half of the year, we actually went out to discover the world and projects of social ecological transformation and went there to volunteer. And actually already in that time, in that half a year, I went to visit Findhorn once for a week, and I did the experience week, which was actually, I think it was even exactly this time now of the year, early May, 4 years ago. Yeah. So yeah, basically in regard to roles, I started with volunteering. My first, let's say, comprehensive and intense volunteering experience was then after that year in Germany and traveling abroad, when I really came here for a year-long internship with the Global Ecovillage Network, but it was the international, like Gen International, which had the head office here in Findhorn, which then also enabled me to really be here in Findhorn for a whole year. And then within that organization, I've been working in the education team a lot. And yeah, kind of this, explored kind of myself of where I feel drawn to. But I think education and music, and just the whole, package of eco-village lifestyle was always already quite a set direction for me. Yeah.
And Findhorn's quite a long... Sorry. Findhorn's quite a long way from Germany. Was there something special about this place particularly that drew you?
I think it really was my fascination with that principle of deep listening. And just feeling also sometimes quite lost before I came to Findhorn, or, finding my way as a young person out there, struggling to kind of go the conventional way, but also still needing some, ground to stand at and also some structures, and just really longing for that. I just really call it inner navigation system, just really feeling led and held by something bigger in a way. Let's call it spirit, what it is. So I think that was the essence of what drew me here. And it's very funny in a way, because before I eventually came here, I never really thought that I'm gonna live outside of Germany. I really love being there and being able to be active, of course, speak in my native language and just be of service and impactful there. It felt much more challenging to actually go out and, go away from your family. So that all happened to my surprise. But I think so many people in Findhorn share that story of it just happened. It was probably meant to be. Yeah.
Within our listening, is there any sort of spiritual background or connection or practice in your family? Or was there any around you growing up, or was this spontaneous for you, out of nowhere, that you found this connection?
Yeah. Not really that we had established practice. I grew up in a kind of Catholic context, and I served in the church for 5 years, when I was probably from 8 to 13 or something like that. But it never really met me, I think. My quest was always deeper, and at the same time, I think there was always a seed inside of me. And I can actually remember, I think actually when I was born, or I was the last child in my family, I think my mom came a little bit into a midlife crisis, and then actually got very much into spirituality. And I can remember actually when I was 12, 13 or 14, I really kind of questioned quite a lot of aspects of life and what's the purpose of that, and in a way quite philosophical. And then I've often been actually, taking and grabbing the books of my mom. One I can remember is Conversations with God from Neil Donald Walsh. I think that's to pronounce it. And started reading that. So that quest was always there. And it wasn't kind of met in the conventional Catholic way. So I kind of just had to go and kind of find it. But looking back, it was definitely helpful that my mom held an open space for it there, and had a willingness to step and kind of share some invitations, or at least lend me books and to talk with me about these sorts of quests, I had inside. Yeah. It's almost touching to talk about it now again, because I'm realizing, oh, wow, that was actually always present with me. Yeah, makes me almost emotional. Yeah.
Yeah, I relate to that a lot. I started out in the church as a kid, but then I had so many questions for the ministers, and then I just kept questioning more and more and more until I realised I kind of had to figure out some other paths.
Yeah.
You mentioned before about the Global Ecovillage Network. Can you tell us more about the Global Ecovillage Network, just in case anyone listening hasn't heard of it before?
Sure. So GEN stands for the Global Ecovillage Network, obviously, as we talked about it already. And GEN is really very much connected to Findhorn because in the early days, Findhorn was very well known for like organizing yearly, or I don't know how often it was, but big conferences. And these conferences were always actually really profound, and often like organizations or just some founding impulses were sparked by them. And so there was one in 1995, which was the Ecovillages and Sustainable Communities Conference. And that conference actually really created the momentum and kind of indicates the founding impulse of then GEN. Back then, I think there were like representatives of 9 ecovillages, something like that. And they then initially created, a network between them in order to support each other, in order to make, that movement and ecovillages visible in the world, and also not to, reinvent the wheel and share solutions and just learnings on the way, because we're all just experimenting in the ecovillage movement and kind of pioneering a lot. And then over the years, over these now, 27, 28 years, that network like really grew more and more. And now we have like, or GEN International is like an ecovillage map and database. We have over 6,000 ecovillage projects registered. And, there are even more out there that are just not mapped. And from there, that kind of movement started, and now it's established to that degree that basically there's GEN International, which is the like, international coordination body. But then there are also different organizations within that international network. For example, you have GENOA, which is the network from North Africa. You have GEN CASA, which is the one from South America. Then you have GEN Africa, which is obviously related to the like African content. GEN Europe, which is the region that we and Findhorn is based in, and then GENOA, which is like Asia, Australia, that sort of direction. And then there's even on top of that a youth arm called Next Gen, which basically represents the youth of all these 5 regions. So now, GEN is a network, but within that network, there are basically different organizations that help to steer local, national, and regional, and then eventually the international network. Yeah.
And what kind of place do you think that ecovillages have in the future of Earth and the future of humanity? Like, what is the impulse for you for ecovillages to be so important and for people to start, living that life?
Sure. I'm personally really passionate about ecovillages, so maybe slightly biased as well. But, I think in particular now where so much goes towards centralization and, our system becoming really fragile through that, I think it's so important that we become more local again. And it doesn't need to be an ecovillage, There are also wonderful cities that have very, rich initiatives like the transition town movement or the permaculture movement. But I think it just comes down to we need to be more locally again, or we need to organize ourselves more locally and decentralized and just come back to the, basics of life and more of a self-sufficiency lifestyle. It doesn't mean we all need to be self-sufficient, but at least to question how reliable we are of the centralized system and just to reclaim our resilience. Our resilience. I think that's really the word, and GEN also, yes, we are, working in the sustainability sector, but we actually often really like to use the word regeneration, which is actually even beyond making something sustainable. It really speaks to actually even regenerating and giving space to, social systems and ecological systems that were already damaged by the way, we live on this earth, and actually helping them to come back to aliveness and health. And I just really like that framework and that context, and also to not only think in a very simple and linear way about, sustainability or regeneration. Often, and I think, there is a thread out there in the world as well of greenwashing and, all these sorts of shortcuts towards sustainability, to actually think it's just to do with ecology, but it's actually not. In order to make something truly sustainable / regenerative, you need to incorporate the whole system. So in Gen, we often speak about different areas of regeneration, which is basically the social one, the ecological one, the cultural, and the economical one. And then at the center, the integral design that basically brings that all together. So that's just really what I love about that eco-village approach, and that sort of thinking about sustainability, that you actually need to incorporate everything.
So that for me, and a lot of people, I think there's a social aspect as a big part, because I think people now are quite isolated. They live in their own houses, and they miss that feeling of community. I think we try to create community. There's, coffee mornings, whatever, in the town hall, but there isn't that real rich feeling of coming together to celebrate the cycles of the seasons and eating together and to appreciate, to bless. The sacred as a community. So
and that is just, I find that is such a really beautiful characteristic of the eco-village movement, the way I perceive it, that the cultural dimension is so strong. We celebrate the seasons or the cycles of the earth. Often there is some sort of sense of we have a higher purpose, or we have a spiritual direction or pathway. There is just something about actually all these there are a lot of community glues, that bring us together, that make us celebrate, that make us enjoy life. In a way, it's that tribal lifestyle. I think that is actually very indigenous to us, that we are just now recreating. And it's not about reinventing that sort of lifestyle. I think that is actually very deep within our genes, literally. Yes. Yeah. And, of course, now even more, coming out of lockdown, or now, it's already in the past for quite some time, but still there are so many after effects of that whole isolation. And, I'm sure the kind of rates of, people with depression, went up so much. I think it's just a basic human need to be in relationship, to be in relationship, and to actually acknowledge and have a lived experience of us being interconnected, which is the fact, We are very much interconnected ecosystems, and the humans are just part of it. Yeah.
And I think humans are craving community more and more as it starts to become more fragmented within mainstream society. So I think the alternatives are becoming more and more popular. Perhaps from the perspective of a musician especially, but I guess also from the perspective of a young person. Do you ever have any desire to go towards a more city life? Or do you feel that eco-villages will still be a big part of your future for the foreseeable future?
It's actually very funny you asked me that question, because I'm actually going to move into a city in September for a year in order to do a practical sustainability course in the city, which is kind of funny. But that is a course which is very much inspired by the transition town and permaculture movement. So, as I mentioned already before, it's really not only on the countryside or in rural areas that a lot of change and, let's say, regenerative life is happening. In particular, it's important that we rethink and find alternatives in city, because the majority of the population is living in cities. But I do have to admit, I go down to Bristol to do that course, but I'm not going down in order to live in a city. So it's more just a side effect I'm kind of then, accepting. Because I think my nature just feels more at home on the countryside and just being surrounded by nature and more stillness and spaciousness. And at the same time, I never lived in a city before. So I'm just also very intrigued to lean into that sort of lifestyle and just see if it maybe even suits me, in the end, and just, to experience that as well. And also to dive a bit more into, some like, sister and brother movements, which are so closely connected to the Ecovillage movement, such as the Transition Town movement. I just feel like I want to, get a good overview and idea of every movement, because in the end, they're all community-led initiatives that are, trying to work with social ecological transformation.
And are you excited about anything musical related for your time in Bristol? Do you think you'll do any performances there?
Yeah, lots of people say there's quite a musical buzz down there. So I'm definitely really excited to get to know the music scene. And I would actually love to find a band down there and do some evening gigs. And of course, there are way more opportunities than here in the northeast of Scotland. So from a artistic point of view, I'm very excited to go down there. Yeah, very much so.
I want to share with everyone your song, All This Light. So I'm going to play that now for everyone.
Away from the madness, I touched upon the sadness in me. I reached into the darkness and I pulled out all this light. Away from the madness, I touched upon the sadness in me. I reached into the darkness and pulled out all this light. All this light, all this light.
Away from the madness and pull out all this light, this light, this
Is there anything you want to tell us about that song, Carolin?
I need to correct that actually it was not me writing that song. It was my partner, David, but then later I added my voice and I also added some, violin improvisation over it. But I'm still sharing that song here just because I really love that song, because it really touches something in me, and it's very touching for me as well to hear me singing that. I have to admit also, when I had times where I felt like I went through the darkness, that song really helped me to kind of work through or just to express my emotions and to kind of get through that. And the lyrics speak to me a lot in a way because actually before I came to Findhorn, I would say often people call it the dark night of the soul. Oh, now we have the cat joining us. It's a dark night of the soul, but the cat brings such a joyful energy. Yeah, exactly. Before I came to Findhorn, there was a time in my life where I really struggled with just feeling lost and kind of losing my ground and where to go, not feeling like I want to fit into university, or I literally don't fit into university, but also feeling I need some structure and a sense of home and community. And also sometimes I have that metaphor. I felt like I was pregnant, but pregnant as a metaphor of there was something that wanted to come through me, that I wanted to give birth to artistically, or just through, the way how I'm serving in the world. But I kind of needed a space to land. I needed a home for that, to feel safe and to have a container for that. And before I came to Findhorn, I just didn't find that place. So I really struggled. And in a way, with me then coming to Findhorn, a whole process of, integrating that dark night of the soul and building myself up again was really key and really part of me. And now I feel like a strong, human being that kind of can follow the call and listen. But it needed the dark night of the soul. But that song, to bring it back to that song, really speaks to me about that. Just saying that, darkness is just equal part of life. And there's a saying, actually, my partner mentioned to me once, I don't know who said it, but just, a phrase, a quote saying the darkness still has work to do. The darkness has a purpose and serves something, and we need to be with it and sit with it, and then it transforms us from the inside out. That song speaks to that. Yeah.
And when you're talking about how you felt, there was something inside you that had to be expressed, that you had to get out. And then also how singing that song helped with that darkness, helped you maybe feel your way through that darkness. I don't know if you remember this, but there was one point when we were sitting outside the Phoenix Cafe. This was several months ago. And then there was a wonderful, I think he was Norwegian man, who was very intuitive, and he was talking about people's auras. And he didn't know anything about you from what I could tell. And he was saying to you that there was something around your throat chakra where you had to sing, you had to release that way, and you had to sing. Do you remember that?
Yes, yeah. When I just started in the cafe.
An introduction to working in the Phoenix Cafe.
It's a wonderful place, really. You have all sorts of wonderful encounters there. But yeah, I do remember that now. And, I'm now just thinking, for me, I play instruments and, the violin was the first one, and I learned that with 7 or 8. But, it became more and more clear to me that the voice is really my main instrument. And often, the work or the expression you feel drawn to is also the greatest medicine for you. And, the throat chakra is really, connected to just sharing your voice, making yourself visible with your voice. And, I think that is all part of it. Yeah.
And can you tell us about your musical path more broadly so far?
Yeah. Generally music was always part of my life. So I first learned the violin, then actually learned the piano. Just before I left school, I had a year of guitar lessons. But singing was, I think, always my thing, which I felt most free and just expressive about, because that feels, the voice is kind of part of your body. It's such a reflection of your soul. And I think sometimes my voice just feels like its own being. And I'm just there to nurture it and to for it to kind of express itself and for me to play with it. So in a way, it's like as if the voice is my teacher, but it's also my kind of closest ally. And I have that funny relationship that I really don't want to do any like formal vocal lessons or something, because there's something so almost precious, sacred about it, where I feel like I don't want to force it. I just want it to, you know, be its own being that kind of expresses itself through me. So it just feels very intuitive. And I think that's probably one of the quests of my life as well, to just, you know, listen to my intuition and be connected with it. Sorry, now I forget your initial question.
Just asking about your musical path.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I started right at the beginning with how I started. Yeah, so exactly. So I grew up, you know, with music lessons. I'm really grateful for my parents, you know, driving me to violin lesson and piano lessons and paying for that and supporting me there while not, you know, putting me under any pressure. And at the same time, I grew up with friends that were also, you know, learning the cello or the piano, and they were also really, you know, going for it. I have like at least 2 who now, you know, study music and, you know, make it their profession. But that always helped me to kind of also, you know, motivate me and keep me going, and not just like, you know, put it aside and not make it a part of my life, let's say it like that. But I never felt like I wanted to go down the, like, you know, again, conventional classical route of, you know, studying piano or violin or voice, because I again felt like I don't want to put that stiff container over it. And it just feels so delicate, and there's so much pressure, you know, about, you know, being the best, and just a lot of contraction, which for me often takes away the soul and the true spirit of music. So it's a very tender relationship for me with, of course, you know, technique and, you know, working on your craft is important, but it's also really about receiving it and being open to spirit and the soul of it to flow and play through you. And that often gets lost as soon as you contract too much, or as soon as it's about performing instead of, I dare to say channeling. I think for me, music is about, of course, having the skills and, you know, being trained, but then, you know, making yourself available for the music to flow and to play through you. And so in school, you know, I was in orchestra. There was even an Irish folk band. Really funny, you know, to grow up in Bavaria in a like very conventional school and then to be part of an Irish folk band. Which I think really was, it was incredibly enriching for me growing up and having that band, because we had that whole folder, you know, full of songs which we played over and over again, but we were like literally gigging, you know, as a group of, let's say, 12 to 14 teenagers. And, you know, we were invited to hotels to play there, or in restaurants. And from that income that we generated through gigging, we even, you know, every like 2 years, we had 2 big buses and drove down to England or Scotland and had like a little tour and slept in churches and had our dundles or our traditional Bavarian clothes, and we're holding these really funny, interesting concerts with Bavarian and Scottish music. But it was just amazing, you know. So I think that makes me really shine and sing, just thinking and sharing about that. That was really important for me. And there I had, again, a sense of community and music and freedom, you know, because there was like, you just try to play it, and now you try to play it a bit faster, kind of in that sort of style where, again, you know, things were not right or wrong. You just found your own style. And that was very important on my path. But I also always felt torn, because there's like, I feel so passionate about music and it feels so strong inside of myself when I play or sing. But again, I couldn't categorize myself in the kind of conventional, classical, musical way, because it felt like so much contraction and pressure, and I just couldn't deal with that. But now being in Findhorn and just being very lucky, you know, with let's say the people I met there, for example, my partner, he plays the guitar almost 24/7 and he's a sound engineer, just, having these encounters and building these relationships, which naturally drew me
Well, just echoing on the Zoom, through your Zoom.
Oh, I'll turn it down. Sorry.
So much amplification though, which naturally drew me back into music and actually expressing it in the way that feels right and intuitive, and then again eventually spirit-led for me. So and now music really came back into my life and really came back as a priority, where I'm like, okay, my soul really came here to do this. And I'm kind of more and more realizing that it's actually really important for me to make it a priority and to create space for it. And now it's quite diverse how I, express my musicianship. One is that I have a musical duo with my partner. He plays the guitar, I play the violin, and we both sing. And, there we play at a wide variety of venues like bars, hotels, restaurants, but also at more private occasions or like weddings and ceremonies. And, we play pretty much crossover for whatever, the location and the hosts ask us for. So that is kind of one project which, really comes alive now, and I'm really enjoying that. And there's something really special about birthing your musical baby in your partnership. That feels really special, and I think I always dreamt of that, actually, so it's really nice that came true.
There's something you said I was really interested by. You said it was like you were talking about your voice, and you were saying it's something it's like it's you but it's not you. I found that interesting. And also like this feeling of nurturing something. I don't know, I can't quite explain what I mean, but like it's like, because I think about me, and also Callum were like saying like I don't like the sound of my voice, and then you see it as this sacred thing, like it's very different attitude. I'm like, oh, my voice, I don't want to listen to it.
And at the same time there's also that funny like differentiation almost for me between my speaking and talking voice and my singing voice. I do find them very different, actually. And sometimes, when I listen to myself, then when I listen to a recording of myself, I'm like, oh, wow, that's my voice. But I also do like that because it helps me to be detached of it in a healthy way and to just really honor it. Like, it's a gift that voice comes through, and I don't try to tweak it much. Of course, I need to take care of my voice. I got sick like 2 weeks ago and lost my voice completely. And it was shocking for me, how kind of that decreased my confidence and made me realize how important my voice really is for me. So I did realize, I need to take more care, in particular when I play a gig for 3 hours. I just need to be sensitive and, again, nurture it. And of course, there are vocal exercises to just, warm up, which I definitely value and which is quite crucial. But I just don't want to get into that right and wrong and almost like manipulating my voice. I just want to strengthen it and help it to just be its unique expression in a way. And ideally improvise and kind of sing its own song. Yeah.
So your musical project with your partner, David Kismyra?
Nowadays, or at the moment, we have a gig coming up every week. Often we play in there and in the classroom or in Aldern in the Inn 1645. So we're, for example, playing now this upcoming Saturday on the 6th of May. And that the little advertisement slot, we're also always available for like ceremonies and weddings, because that is really what I am and David as well are passionate about, like really creating these like intimate experiences for people on really special days. It just feels so precious, and it feels like such an honor to kind of help, hold the sacred space in a way through the music we create when, the bride walks down the aisle or, in these kind of key moments of a ceremony. Yeah.
And you've done quite a few theatre shows by now as well, in terms of the music.
You know, that's the wonderful thing about Findhorn. There's like culturally so much happening. So I do really feel like I can totally explore myself with my music. Callum also knows Laura Passetti very well. I think she was on the podcast
her, yes,
as well.
yeah.
Exactly. She is just wonderful, and her way of teaching, you know, with the eco theater. And yes, exactly. I've been collaborating with her for the last 2 big eco theater she has been doing. One was the Red Ball, and then the latest one, the one Are You Happy? Where Callum played the wonderful snail, which was hilarious. Yeah, and exactly there, you know, it's really fun for me to just play around with and basically create a musical experience, which is very different than, you know, playing a performance, because you're really in the background trying to tune in what is needed to actually create a space for the actors or for that scene to be even deeper and more profound. This music is just amazing, what kind of atmospheres you can create with it. And yes, like with the Red Ball, I've been actually playing around a lot with the loop station that I'm using, where I basically can record and also pre-record different tracks of mine, which is great because I can't play 3 violin parts at the same time. So that was a really nice experiment. And then the latest one now in March. There I've been really playing around with like lots of different instruments. I got recently quite passionate about expanding my collection of instruments. And now I have like a shamanic drum. I have a shruti box. Since recently I have a harp as well, and the flute. I think I'm very content now with the instruments I have, so I'm trying to tell myself to not get any more. But in the context of creating music for theater, it's wonderful because each instrument really, you know, brings forth a different quality. So in the latest one, I worked with the drum, and it was beautiful because the eco theater really, you know, invites people to come into an altered state. And then, of course, it's wonderful to use a shamanic drum. And I'm also doing a shamanic training. So there was, again, a really nice synergy between combining like my musical path with my, you know, other paths. And then I used the shruti box and the violin. Not the loop station this time, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. And the community is a great way to explore and enrich with music. Yeah.
Earlier on, you mentioned how you used to be in an Irish folk band. I found that quite interesting to hear because earlier on today, because we had this interview today, I was showing my mum your music. So we were listening together. And then I told her that you're from Bavaria. But she said she really heard like a Celtic thing going on in your music. So I wonder, is there any sort of special inspiration or connection to Scotland in your music, or to Ireland, or to Celtic places?
You know, it's funny, again, you know, it's no coincidence that I go into a conventional school in Bavaria and then I come across an Irish folk band, you know. Again, I think that's just something which was very early on in my biography, which is kind of connected to, you know, a deeper destiny or connection. And I deeply resonate with some of these songs, maybe not the ones where it's all about the whiskey and being drunk, but there are some which like are incredibly touching, and in particular also some songs in Gaelic, which really, you know, my Irish folk leader sometimes said, you know, these tunes literally came from the people, you know, sitting by the hills and listening to the fairies, you know. I think there's just that whole culture where the veil, you know, between the worlds is so much thinner here, and you know there are fairy councils and everything is just much more alive.
Is in Bavaria, is any kind of like fairy kind of folklore there at all, like Ireland and Scotland, or is it not so much?
Probably I completely denied some things there, or not denied, no, that's not what I want to say, but not that I actively encountered it, but I think that is due to the way I was brought up in the kind of Catholic framework where, you know,
but it's not so much in the culture of Bavaria.
I wouldn't say so. And at the same time, nature in Bavaria is amazing, you know. I think nowadays, where I do have slightly different lenses, I think I would feel that kind of, you know, the veil between the worlds a lot more. And, you know, tradition and culture is very important in Bavaria, but I never felt like it had that, you know, I never felt it was like sensitive enough in a way for that sort of, you know, listening and that connection between the worlds. But I'm sure it's kind of there, and I just need to go there now with different lenses, and then I'm gonna encounter it in a way. But yeah, it's part of my story that I kind of, you know, just needed to be here, and I needed to follow, you know, the way also the music directed me with these kind of songs and tunes. Yeah.
With Findhorn being a very musical place where you have met so many different musicians and other kinds of creative people, I want to ask if there's, and you've also mentioned about how you didn't choose to take like a formal musical education like in a university or conservatory. I want to ask, is there anything that you think you've learned about music in Findhorn that you probably wouldn't have learned anywhere else?
Yeah, definitely. You know, I think at that point I need to name a beautiful, mentor for me that I'm working with now, which is Barbara Svetina, which, you know, lived in Findhorn for a long time and really helped start to create that singing culture here. You know, we have like thesis singing once a week, once a week in the kind of big space in the singing chamber or in the Universal Hall, but also during the week. But yeah, just saying, she is like one of the people which I'm now working closely with, which really helped me to get new perspectives on music. And one kind of slogan she has is songs to connect heaven and earth. And actually that sits quite deeply with me now, because there's something about music being an amazing medium to actually connect the seen and the unseen world. Just when you think it's, you know, our ears, that sort of sense is something which is already slightly in the transcendent world, because we clearly perceive the sense, but we can't see the sound waves, you know, waving through the air, you know. So it's already a medium which for me incorporates the seen and the unseen. And yeah, there I'm kind of really deepening my journey of like, singing is not just about singing or like music in general. It's really about music and sound are carrier waves, and depends on what intention you connect it with. And according to that, you know, you can call in a lot. You can call in unseen beings. You can create an amazing space. It's just an amazing medium to actually exactly dance that dance that is so core to Findhorn, you know, co-creating with nature and merging the seen with the unseen again, and not just, you know, denying it and having our linear thinking of how things are working in the seen and normal world. Yeah. So for me, it's really a spiritual path. And whenever I perform, I actually do hold like an attunement and call in the intentions that I want the music to carry, you know, and that I want the music to convey in a way, because it's a carrier wave, you know, that brings a message, that brings an intention. And it's actually really beautiful. I'm also studying at the moment with another like song leader lady, and she says, she recently explained something which was like, yes, you know, manifestation and intention works through setting an intention, but as well, you need like an activator for it, you know, in order for it to manifest itself. And emotions, for example, or bringing in all your senses is a wonderful way to activate that intention and to activate these care waves to, you know, carry forth that intention out into the world. And of course, you know, singing is about singing the lyrics and working with the intention, but it's also about bringing your whole self into it and bringing the emotions into it. So music is amazing and just very efficient in amplifying your intentions and bringing that out into the world. So for me, it's like a whole world, which I think within the last years is more and more starting to show itself to me. And, I'm also doing a shamanic training, which is really, about connecting the seen with the unseen world, or, bringing them more back into balance again. But for me, I think my shamanic medium probably is, music. And it's also a way, I'm not sure if I talked about, these kind of intentions behind my music, or these kind of, almost sacred vows probably that I'm starting to, hold about my relationship to music. But it's a really beautiful way to actually, convey the message and convey spirit without needing to kind of talk about it. And, you just feel it, you don't need to talk about it. You just feel it. Yeah.
I really feel that in your music, and there is something really special about music in particular. So I say this as someone whose thing is writing, like that's what I'm most drawn to, and that's when I feel like I'm most like channeling when I'm writing. But as like an audience member to art, music's always what gets me there most spiritually. And one of my favourite quotes is from one of my favourite writers, Kurt Vonnegut. And he said that the only proof that he needed for the existence of God was music.
Oh, it's beautiful. I love that. Yeah, absolutely. And, there are also so many actually metaphors or like ancient, texts that talk very, very much about actually, our existence being connected to music, like, for example, in the beginning, there was the word or the sound. So yeah, we're kind of made out of music. We're made out of vibration. It's not solid matter. It's all, just vibrating particles in a way. And, I think music is actually a whole science or vibration. Yeah. And maybe just saying that in regard to creativity, when was it? I think a year ago or 2 years ago, I read the book The Artist's Way from Julia Cameron. It's basically like a 3 months long program which helps you to unblock your creativity. And while doing that course and, of course, reading the book, I also grounded my definition and perception of what creativity is. In a way, it is channeling, at least for me. I think everyone has a different, relationship to creativity, but to me, it really helped to say, creativity is me being a container for creating, for spirit creating through me. So it is, again, creativity and music is a spiritual practice. When you hold the awareness of that intention.
So the next thing I want to ask links the two major themes that we've been talking about, I guess. So we've been talking about eco-villages and we've been talking about music. So two things that you're very involved with and very passionate about. In the context of that, do you think that there's any sort of special link between music and the new world that people are trying to create with the eco-village movement?
For me personally, it feels quite clear at the moment that music and like eco-villages are my two paths. And I do see a lot of, interconnections between, for example, music I find is an amazing tool for strengthening and also building community. And also when you're in a community meeting, just sing a song at the beginning. And I tell you, the meeting will be a lot better because you're kind of creating cohesion and you harmonize the voices. Literally, you kind of attune yourself to each other. And actually, I think, in order to have a good community culture, it's really about listening. Being able to listen and play your part in it. And that is actually what you do when you play music together. And I also love the element of like you play music, you don't do music, you play music. So also bringing forth, there's something about being playful. And I think that's how we actually, how our evolution works and happens through play. So I see like a massive interlink there, and just the kind of, soft skills and interpersonal skills you develop through music, to listen to each other, to tune in, to kind of play your part, and that's what makes a community work, when each person plays their part and listens, and kind of creates that harmony, in between the voices. And then also, I think another component which I just love about Findhorn, that it's so present, is that, connecting the seen with the unseen world, because, for me, somehow that becomes more and more relevant. And, with us, with all the, crisis that we are already in, it's not just only something that's kind of scheduled for the future. We are already in crisis and collapse. I think that is one of the things that actually will help us to kind of overcome it and to transform through that, befriending nature and developing again that higher respect for nature, that it's just beyond the material, of it. It's not just a tree, it's not just wood, there's a whole spirit, there's a whole unseen component, which goes with nature. And I think music can help us, or like music can help us in connecting with that unseen part, with that feeling part and that kind of sensation part. To kind of summarize us, probably there are various interlinks between community and music, and I think both are actually really, evolutionary paths forward, when we do it with the right intention that is based on love and listening.
Do you think eventually you might marry these things together and have kind of this almost like group therapy through music kind of thing? Or is that something you've thought about doing? Or
I think my
bringing groups
bigger
together
vision is definitely about bringing it together, and also helping communities to anchor more music, within their communities, so that they can actually really use it as a tool, for community building and for creating group cohesion. And at the same time, I think the more each person, grows again into, her or his musical self, I think the more harmonious actually we're going to be, because in the end, I think it means reconnecting to ourselves, to our voice, listening to our voice, sharing our voice. So I can't quite put it all into words yet. It's just like that strong feeling about there's something quite profound about it. And I'm sure I'm not the only person that senses that. And yes, it's definitely my vision to bring these parts together. In a way, it also even feels like I'm already bringing it together, because I'm just trying to be authentic in kind of living both. Yeah.
And have you found in the journey that you're working with David and your relationship with him, has music been an advantage to relationships?
It actually got us together. And I think it's a very sweet story, actually, because we met in the recording studio, which is in the Universal Hall, where Lawrence back then created a movie for the Foundation for the Climate Change and Consciousness Conference, and he invited lots of different local musicians to basically come create and play and record a soundtrack, or musical components for that film. So that is basically where we met, and I think it was through recognizing each ourselves within music and feeling the harmony and the voices, that we kind of share through music, and we kind of, recognized and acknowledged our connection. And, in the end, it ended up as also, becoming partners or, ending up in a relationship. But even if that wouldn't have happened, I think we would still be connected through music. Totally. And now, of course, it's just wonderful to have that as part of your relationship. And, in a way, we are quite harmonious when we're together. And I think that is then also reflected in our music, because somehow singing harmonies is just something that falls in place between us with a lot of ease. And I was very struck when David told me a few months ago that he said, like, I always struggled with singing harmonies, but now somehow between us, it just falls into place. And I think there's something, about we just vibrate in a harmonious way, at least the majority of the time. So that can then be, also conveyed into our music, or the music in a way is a transmission of our connection, how we are relating. So it's wonderful being able to express what we have in a way as well through our music, and just to be creative together. I think just being creative is one of the most satisfying things ever. Yeah, for me. Yeah.
We're going to finish this podcast in a song, and in this song you express your feelings about community. So the song's called This Is Community. But before we play the song, is there anything you'd like to tell us about this song? And can you tell us what community means to you?
Yeah, that song is actually the soundtrack of the Red Ball Theatre, which was created and held by Laura Passetti, which we talked about already earlier. Basically the song came into being because there was a scene which was about community life. So I kind of just took that and saw what came through in a way. And your question was about what community means to me. Sorry, I forgot that.
What community means to you?
What community means to me. Yeah. I think sharing a life and acknowledging our interconnection and actively nurturing and making the best out of that interconnection. Maybe is that now too complex? No, the words. No, I think, I think just acknowledging, that we're all connected to each other, and actually actively living that and fostering that and creating from that interconnection. Yeah.
It's been a really wonderful hour. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you, Callum and Alex. It's so nice to chat to you and to create together. Again, I just love creating together. Something else gets born.
This has been our Findhorn Barrow once again, and this is Community.
Community, this is community. We dance and sing and pray and work and heal and bless this land. This is community, this is community. We dance and sing and pray and work and heal and bless this land. This is community, this is community. We dance and sing and pray and work and heal and bless this land. This is community, this is community. We dance and sing and pray and work and heal and bless this land. This is community, this is community. We dance and sing and pray and work and heal and bless this land. This is community, this is community. We dance and sing and pray and work and heal and bless this land. This is community.